Hey, good morning, everyone. Happy springtime, beautiful weather out there. Uh, I know it's been a couple weeks since the last one, like Easter, so we're gonna jump back in this. So remember last time Joseph was having some dreams. Last time we did 30 Genesis 37. So Joseph is the youngest, but he's dreaming that he's going to rule over his brothers. His dad had already made him like a robe that shows that he's going to be an heir. He was loved. And he went out for a status check, and his brothers sold him to some Ishmaelites. And so you remember the irony of it is that they were actually related to Ishmael. They were like his great, well, Abraham would be, they had the same grandfather and great grandfather, which would be Abraham. So that happened last time. We're going to jump into 38, and it's a short one, so we'll get into it. At the time, Judah, remember Judah was like the older son. Judah left his brothers and went down to stay with a man of Adullam named Hirah. There, Judah met the daughter of a Canaanite man named Shua. He married her and made love to her. She became pregnant and gave birth to a son who is named She conceived again and gave birth to a son named Onan. She gave birth to still another son and gave him the name Shelah. It was at Kazib that she gave birth to him. Judah got a wife for his firstborn, and her name was Tamar. But Judah's firstborn, was wicked in the Lord's sight, so the Lord put him to death. Then Judah said to Onan, sleep with your brother's wife and fulfill your duty to her as a brother-in-law to raise up offspring for your brother. But Onan knew that the child would not be his, so whenever he slept with his brother's wife, he spilled his semen on the ground to keep from providing offspring for his brother. What he did was wicked in the Lord's sight, so the Lord put him to death. So, let's see. One, I guess that's the first recorded ever pulling out. Essentially, we're in Genesis, and thousands and thousands of years ago, dude pulled out on her. But this later became law, so they were supposed to continue to have like another son to keep the heir going, and that so it was the next son in line who was responsible to make a son with the first son's widow, so the sister-in-law essentially. And this was important, at the time for God, because we're going to see how this plays out, because of the bloodlines. Bloodlines are so important in this because remember, Jesus as the Messiah had to come from David's bloodline, and we're going to get there. So anyway, Onan, he was pulling out, didn't really want a whole lot to do with this chick, and the Lord didn't like that. The Lord wanted her to have a child from Judah's bloodline. And so Judah then said to his daughter-in-law Tamar, live as a widow in your father's household until my son Shelah grows up. For he thought he may die too, just like his brothers. So Tamar went to live in her father's household. After a long time, Judah's wife, the daughter of Shua, died. When Judah had recovered from his grief, he went up to Timnah to the men who were shearing his sheep, and his friend Hirah, the Adullamite, went with him. When Tamar was told, your father-in-law is on his way to Timnah to shear his sheep, she took off her widow's clothes, covered herself with a veil to disguise herself, and then sat down at the entrance to Eniam, which is on the road to Timnah. For she saw that though Shelah had now grown up, she had not been given to him as a wife. She's bound and determined, because she feels that's her duty, to her existence on this earth now. She feels like it's to have a child from Judah's bloodline. And there's still another son, and Judah just has not given the son over yet. Maybe because the first two died, he might kind of blame her, but he hasn't pulled the trigger. So when Judah saw her, he thought she was a prostitute, for she had covered her face, not realizing that she was his daughter-in-law. He went over to her by the roadside and said, come now, let me sleep with you. And what will you give me to sleep with you? She asked. I'll send you a young goat from my flock, he said. Will you give me something as a pledge until you send it, she asked. He said, what pledge should I give you? Your seal and its cord and the staff in your hand, she answered. So he gave them to her and slept with her, and she became pregnant by him. After she left, she took off her veil and put on her widow's clothes again. So she got the job done, right? But she got it done from daddy because his wife had died, and now he's got the itch. She shows up, covers her face, and part of like the translation in Hebrew for prostitute is also like someone who hides himself as well. So it kind of has that meaning. But he did sleep with her. She gets like, like the seal that you would, later they stamped it in wax. They did it in clay then. That means something like from the bloodline. That's his signature. And the staff presumably had like different writings and markings on it. So all these things were important. And the seal was on a cord, like they would carry it around their neck, and that's how they would do their signature. So it meant a lot. Meanwhile, Judah so she used that like collateral until you send the goat kind of a thing. But now she's taking off her clothes or putting her widow clothes back on, and she's hiding again. Meanwhile, Judah sent the young goat by his friend the Adullamite in order to get his pledge back from the woman, but he did not find her. He asked the men who lived there, where is the shrine prostitute who was beside the road to Enium? There hasn't been any shrine prostitute here, they said. So he went back to Judah and said, I didn't find her. Besides, the men who live there said, there hasn't been any shrine prostitute hanging around here. Then Judah said, let her keep what she has, or we will be a laughing stock. So now he's like, keep it under wraps. We will be a laughing stock. And after all, I did send her this young goat, but you didn't find her. About 3 months later, Judah was told, your daughter-in-law Tamar is guilty of prostitution, and as a result, she is now pregnant. So Judah said, bring her out here and have her burned to death. Because now he's mad she was a prostitute, because it's his daughter-in-law and kind of disgraced him. As she was being brought out, she sent a message to her father-in-law. I am pregnant by the man who owns these, she said. And she added, see if you recognize whose seal and cord and staff these are. Judah recognized them and said, she is more righteous than I, since I wouldn't give her to my son Shelah, and he did not sleep with her again. So he's like, look, she's the one doing the right thing. She was waiting. She knows that her job is to have a son through this bloodline, and she didn't get, Judah did not give her the other son. And so he held out, and then he slept with a prostitute. So when he says she's more righteous than I, damn right. She was, carrying on the bloodline like she had married and swore an oath to, because that was the law and the Lord's law at the time. And he didn't sleep with her again, ever. So that was it. When the time came for her to give birth, there were twin boys in her womb. As she was giving birth, one of them put out his hand, so the midwife took a scarlet thread and tied it on his wrist and said, this one came out first. But when he drew back his hand, his brother came out, and she said, so this is how you have broken out. And he was named Perez. Then his brother, who had the scarlet thread on his wrist, came out, and he was named Zerah. So Perez, Jesse, King David's father, came from Perez's bloodline. So this is all important in the entire way of like showing how God had it on Tamar's heart, right? To get pregnant somehow by Judah's bloodline, because this is part of Abraham's bloodline. And now she does it, she fulfills it, and Perez is, is the first of the twins. Well, however you want to look at it, is one of the twin boys. And Jesse is David's dad, and Jesse came from Perez's bloodline. So it's fulfilled, it's done, and that is how we carry into Jesus being part of David's bloodline. So very important. Anyway, that's kind of the short and sweet one. We'll jump into this again, hopefully sooner than later. Love you guys. Have a great week.